another episode of Courage in the Crisis. Last time we looked at relationships, and before that, last Thursday, we looked at children. And today, as promised, we'll be continuing our conversation as we continue our talk about children and parents and how they manage at home during this time. This afternoon, joining me, we have a couple of guests along with Andrea Errol from Antigua, who has joined us before. We have Damon Bacchus from St. Kitts, and we have Reverend Esther Moore Roberts all the way from Tobago. So we welcome them today. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves, just tell us a little bit about themselves. Let's start with you, Damon. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for having me this afternoon. I'm a teacher of 12 years. I teach at local high school here in St. Kitts. I have a lovely 4-year-old daughter who keeps me on my toes. I love sports, so track and field, cricket, those things that I enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Sister Esther?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me as well. I hear you say way down in Tobago, but we're also close. However, yes, I am the Minister of Christian Education in Tobago and the Superintendent of the Tobago Conference. I'm also a parent in the form of having a child we adopted about 10 years ago. So I have come from, one who has not born, but one who is raising and is a teenager. So, we have learned quite a lot in this experience. But it is really a good thing to be here this afternoon.
Thank you so very much. We usually like to check in with everyone to see how they're doing. Even though myself and Andrea are professionals, we don't take it for granted that no matter your position or what you do, that this experience is novel and all of us are affected and impacted. So I just want to get a just quick check-in. How has your week been? Have there been any highlights, any challenges that you wish to share as we continue our discussion this afternoon? Let's start with Andrea this time around.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Well, for one, this week our curfew hours will change, and so we have a longer period of time that we can be outside. That happened yesterday, and it started today. And honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about that. You would think that you'd be more excited that you have more time to be out, but I'm not sure I'm at that point yet. It's for me, it's probably like, am I sure I want to be out there?
Yeah, I think the relaxing of the curfew kind of brings up anxieties for some people because you're not really sure if you're ready or if things are where they should be. So I hear that. What about you, Sister Esther? How has your week been so far?
Quite good, except that we had we were promised that today or by today we would have heard something about school and exams, and not hearing has created a new level of anxiety in the children. Okay, so they have asked more teachers to get online. They discovered we have 60% of our children who do not have access to the technology. And so though they want school to, be moving at a pace, it can't happen. And I think that has created a kind of tension in the nation right now. You could feel it, and all the questions on the radio and all that. But we are going to come through this. I am convinced we'll come through.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to that idea of the school issue, because honestly that's a big part of what parents are dealing with now, and the challenges and the fluidity with which everything is happening. So we're going to come back to that. Damon, what about you? How has the past week been for you?
This week we've had some curfew relaxation, similar to what Andre would have spoken about. So Monday, Tuesday, Today and tomorrow we have relaxed curfew, which means from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. We are free to move about for essential purposes still. If you need to go to the bank, go to the supermarket, things of that nature. But it's been challenging in terms of getting used to your new orientation. I went to the bank this morning, for example, and you're standing 6 feet distance, and everybody has on their mask. And then from the bank, you try to go to the supermarket, and it's the same issue again. You're standing, so it's requiring a lot of patience, and I think it's difficult for most persons to reorient themselves to what we have to face.
And I'm glad that you said that because the reality is, imagine how it is for a child to kind of figure out this reorientation. I mean, it's hard enough. Although they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but that's not a good analogy here. But for most children, children do get used to patterns and routines, and they thrive in a schedule. They thrive with a routine when they know what to expect, and we can start to talk about that. What have you noticed? Sister Esther mentioned in terms of school and not knowing what's going on there, but what have you noticed with your own children or with children that you've um, taught to or engaged with? What have you noticed have been the greatest challenges for them? Let's start with you, Sister Esther.
Well, as I said, I have a teenager, and she was supposed to write the CXC exams. What I saw was, anger. She was angry because she was ready, and then this change came. The most interesting thing she said to me is, "Auntie, you see why people break out of jail?" And I understand how she feels. So, I realized I had to do other things to bring that down. And so, we started playing little games, letting her listen to music, just to tone it down, because she was really, really angry that, she couldn't write her exams. And therefore, that's why I'm saying I'm feeling the tension as the day draws. But she says, "I know I should have finished my orals." And because she's talking to other young people, you're hearing her coming back every minute, sharing these concerns. This one said this one said that. Do you think it's so? So there's really, really a lot of pressure on the young people, the children especially. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling to have to invest so much time and energy into your studies and to see, well, not even know what will happen. That's is not a good feeling. It's very frustrating, very disappointing, very demotivating. Yeah, so that's a big one. What about you, Damon? What have you noticed in your own young one that has been a challenge?
I think the number one issue is getting bored. Daddy, I'm bored. So my daughter is 4 years old, hyperactive, full of energy, and so she wants to keep doing stuff, keep doing stuff. So myself and her mom, we're constantly engaged throughout the day, even when we at certain points of the day would want a 5 minutes or a 10-minute break, she's going. So the routine does help. I know that it sounds cliche when you say make sure that the child has a routine, but it does help. And when she takes her nap at 1 o'clock, we get to take a deep breath and get ready for the action again when she wakes up. In terms of the teenagers, because I do teach at a high school, as Sister Moore would have stated, that they're worried. They're unsure of what is going to take place. Some of them are relieved based on what CXC is saying in terms of just having multiple choice exam and SBA marks in order to be graded. So some of them are relieved in that aspect, but a number of them would have been preparing for 5 years if you want to go back to primary school. We know in the Caribbean that we hold CXC as the end all. If you don't pass CXC, life doesn't go on basically. So there's that pressure, there's that expectation, and now that they're left in a zone where they're not sure what's going to happen. And so I'm sure they're feeling anxious as well.
Yeah. a lot is happening, and it's really difficult for us to deal with change. A lot of children talk about not being around their friends and dealing with the new structure of online learning, which is a whole different animal in and of itself. But you brought up something really interesting there, and I think it's a good segue to the fact that when your children have challenges, parents are going to have additional challenges, and trying to navigate that, like just what you just said, your 4-year-old at home all day, with you're limited in your activities, you're limited in a lot of things, and you still have to figure out how to keep the child, I don't want to say entertained, but engaged. And yeah, what else besides that, if anything else, has been a real big challenge for you? Because I imagine at the end of the day, you're exhausted, Damon.
I will say that Nyla, even though she's full of energy, she's very understanding as well. That is rare in a 4-year-old per se. So she understands the situation that we're in. She understands that we're in a lockdown. You try to explain to them simple words, language that they can understand and comprehend. And so she understands that yes, we can go here, we can go there. And so what she's begun to do is build a list of things that she wants to do, and we can leave the house. So she wants to go to the movies, she wants to go to the park, daddy will go to the beach, and so forth. So it is important to have hope, to make sure that you engage children in hope, let them look to the future, let them look forward to activities that they are accustomed to, and that this particular situation, we're not going to be in it forever. So we do have to be a bit patient, and that's why I tell her you have to be patient. But when we do get a chance to go out, yes, we will engage in these things that you like.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Just having her to sit down and independently come up with her own ideas and things she would do. That's great. Sister Esther, what about you? What have you noticed, not only yourself but other parents facing in terms of challenges?
The number of questions. How do you answer all the questions honestly and not, behave as if, well, you have the answer to all that's going on. A lot of parents say, these children are now asking them many, many more questions and expecting an answer. As parents, we have to say to them, listen, just be truthful. We don't know when it will end, but we trust it will end. It has to end sometime. Questions, of why this should happen in our year, why this should happen, all the way down here. And they don't want to listen to the news. I mean, parents are saying, I say to them, let's listen to the news and hear what new they're coming up with. But no, they prefer you to give them an answer that says, listen, they have found the vaccine, or there's some cure. They don't want to hear the news, and they can understand that because it's very depressing. The news that you hear every day, you hear is death, death, death. So many parents are struggling with how do we answer the questions truthfully and still give them the hope that we are coming out of this soon. It won't be forever. As Brother Bakker says, patience, wait. You see, one of the things that set persons my age at an advantage is because we also experienced state of emergencies before, and coup and all those kinds of negatives in a society, and know that we came through. So I was able to use, and I guess others who talk with me, we say use the experience we had and let them know we did fun things. We went in the backyard and we made a pot, cooked something outside, and that would be fun because they didn't stop you from going in your yard, they stopped you from leaving. So, we try to say, be creative. And I think many parents are considering a little more creative activity to answer, to take away the humdrum of all the questions that have no answers yet, no answers that they would like to hear yet. And that is one of the things, as parents, we really have to do to deal with the attacks coming at us from the young trend. Why is this happening to you? Or why is this happening to the church? Why is this happening to this? We're praying all the time, and many questions.
Yeah, it's something very interesting because, especially if you have a precocious child or an inquisitive child or a very intelligent child, you're going to get lots more questions than you're used to on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
And then you're in this environment anyway. So even in a normal environment, you might have a child that likes to engage in conversation and discussion. And then you throw this into the mix and it becomes a whole different thing. And then at any point in the day, whether you're prepared for a question or not, you can get a question, which shows us that, most parents generally have to have on their parent hat all the time, and that could be a bit much if you have to be always engaged in your parent hat all the time. It can become a bit overwhelming because there are times that you want to like feel like yourself and not have to feel a bunch of questions like you're a prime minister in a press conference. And there are times that you don't want to be thinking about what the next activity going to be or what the next meal will look like. Or, there are times you want to take off your parent hat, but unfortunately, we are in a situation where a lot of parents don't have the luxury of doing that. Any thoughts on that, Andrea, as we kind of try to navigate some of these challenges?
Okay, well, it's they are home and they are going to ask a lot of questions. And yes, I want to reinforce that you don't have all the answers, and it's important to let them know that too. And really work with your experience. And as Sister Esther said, be creative, find other things that you can do together. But you can also establish some me time. You know, this is the time. Like, I'm going to get 5 minutes. Of course, sometimes the 3, 4-year-old cannot wants to know if the 4 minutes not up yet, or while mommy has this hung on the door, you can't come to the room until when I remove it. And you also can practice them with independent play. This is the time you have to play by yourself until the alarm goes off. You start with 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you move it up 6, 7 until you can get a 10 minutes probably, where they can play independently, because it can be a lot. They're inside for the most part, and you are their company, and especially the smaller ones at times. At times, the smaller ones, they can be manipulative too. I know a 4-year-old who is saying to his mommy that, well, I don't have a brother and a sister, and I can't go to school. So how am I? You're going to leave me to play by myself? And so that is his way to ensure that the parents are always attentive. So we have to be mindful of that too.
Yeah, good points as well. We recognize though that everyone's situation isn't straightforward. We recognize that there are some challenges that some parents and children would have had before this crisis. For instance, we recognize that there are children with special needs, with developmental issues, with ADHD, with physiological, psychological, all types of issues and challenges. And I can imagine that the parents of those children would have a particular difficult time trying to navigate these waters that we're in. Any tips that you would share, Sister Esther, for children with parents of children with these type of needs?
Right off my head, the thing is, we need to, one, accept that your child needs you. You are there to comfort. And so, regardless of the condition of a child, challenged or what we may call normal, we need to be present with them. Now, art, I think art is an excellent way, because a number of children are comforted by creating what is on their inside. If they're worried or anxious or angry, art is one of the things, you can indulge them more into. Well, smaller ones, Play-Doh, making things and getting excited about what they make, giving them little projects. Let us, build a little trap for some little bird, or, that sort of thing. We have to, as I say, be creative So that art is one of those ways. Now, thank God for video conferencing, and thank God that you can call someone else who has a child with a similar condition, because these days there are all kinds of organizations where persons of similar needs can meet together and they interface and see a friend or see someone who they are familiar with, because they may have been going to school or going to a particular special needs program. And now that they're at home, they would be missing those persons. So we need, if you're able, because that's the next challenge, as I said, not all parents or all homes have the facilities to utilize in helping to bridge this gap with the absence of a teacher or absence of a friend. But if you're able, we need to utilize that so as to bring, the closeness to someone that they know, say hi, wave, say hi to the teacher and that sort of thing. What we find is that our teachers here, though, are being very proactive in, they are the ones calling the home. How is so-and-so? And so that's what I'm saying. The fact that you could video call, they see teacher and they share. But if the absence of a teacher, we, the parents, have to become friend, teacher, nurse, playmate, everything. And we have to find, well, as I say, we have to become a child again and play with them. Well, I think most persons who have special needs children were taught or have been exposed. How do you do that with, special needs children? And so I hope we'll continue to be creative.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. And as you were speaking, I thought about the fact that, excuse me, um, you know, this really unfortunately emphasizes some of the limitations that persons would have already had, whether it be the tools or the resources to access for their children. And not having those tools and resources, not being able to meet your children's needs as usual can be really frustrating for parents. Thankfully, as you said, you know there are there if you have the means, you can tap into like the teacher or the helper or whoever was assisting the child before, hopefully have a means of communicating with them, because oftentimes children with special needs, they really need that routine of seeing the same faces, of have doing the same things, and trying to implement that type of routine into the home as much as you are able is really positive. I can give an example of a friend of mine who's a teacher. One of her students had a really big anxiety problem, and it was only through, in the last term or so, she was kind of getting better and better. But since this thing started and she was at home, she kind of, her progression went right back down. So the teacher had to kind of get into the routine of every day or two, just have a short chat with her, kind of engage her again. Yeah, because she had gotten used to the teacher's face, she had gotten used to her classmates' face, and that was helping her with her anxiety. So sometimes we kind of, as we said, have to get a little creative with how we address some of these issues. Andrea and Damon, I'm going to bring up another topic here, because one of the biggest worries and concerns for a lot of children, a lot of parents are, hey, my child before would be at school now, and the school would have been providing nourishment, providing food. Here in Barbados, for instance, we have a school meals um, service. So really, at the primary and secondary level, that all children pay. Even, I don't ever think, if you can't pay, you don't pay. But those that can pay a nominal fee, like $1 a week, and they get out like a cooked meal, rice and potato and a fruit and all sort of stuff. So, a lot of parents are missing that right now. What can we say to those parents? We're going to start with you, Andrea, and then we're going to go to you, Damon, especially since you teach in the school. What can we say to them as they try to deal with that?
Okay, I think what is happening in most territories presently, there's some sort of feeding program that is going on. I know in Antigua and Barbuda, being cognizant of the persons who rely on the school meal, there's a sort of continuation of that program, and the government has also provided some other things. There are church groups and other groups that are providing. So parents, they need to reach out. Somebody else that you trust, you speak directly to members of the church or even if you need assistance, you reach out, and there's several hotlines here locally. So I would encourage parents to reach out as best as possible so that they can get supplies. And there's also the parent who was working, didn't have those issues, but now the single parent who is not working anymore, or even in the two-family household, both parents are laid off. In Antigua and Barbados, tourism is our main industry. All of this, that industry has, it's basically closed. So it's important that people reach out. And another part of it too is that based on what you have, the limited food stuff that you might have, it's also important, because one of the issues that keeps coming about is that children are eating the parents. They're just eating, and some persons are saying that they're like termites now. They eat. I never knew my child ate this much, and that sort of thing. And this is also an opportunity to teach them some responsibility. I would even want to suggest sometimes for the younger one, you pack their lunch bag, you fill their water bottles, you give them their juice, and this is what it is for the day. And you can't eat 3 hot dogs, but you have to get 1.5 each, because we need to be responsible. So persons need to reach out, but we also need to teach the children some level of responsibility where necessary. And I want to add to, sometimes they're not necessarily hungry, they're bored. So then maybe you need to assess the situation and determine what is actually happening before you feed them every time they make a request.
I think
Damon?
Andrea would have hit the nail on the head, so to speak, in terms of persons must be willing to reach out and to let somebody know, whether it's your pastor or somebody in the community who you trust. Let them know that you're having difficulties. It's a crisis, and we must understand that even if you were able to make ends meet prior to this, given the circumstances, that might not be. I know a lot of persons would have pride. You don't necessarily want everybody to know your business. And so it's important for you to reach out to persons that you trust. I must say that the NGOs have been doing a very good job in St. Kitts as well, in terms of creating a hot meals program where they try to provide meals for those who are vulnerable. But it's also a good opportunity for us to be our neighbor's keeper. We, for the most part, know persons within our church community or within our community itself who might not have it all, so to speak. So don't just necessarily wait for them to reach out to you, but you can call and check up and say, how is everything with you? Do you have everything you need for this week? And things of that nature. I think that will go a long way in getting persons to open up to you and say, okay, I really need a pound of sugar. I really need 2 tins of milk, or whatever the case might be. So don't just wait for persons to reach out, but person that you are aware of within your church community, within the wider community, who might not necessarily have it, you reach out to them and get them to open up to you.
Awesome. Both very good points. I really want to hammer home that this experience that we're having is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity for our children to learn how to be responsible. It's an opportunity for them to learn how to discipline themselves a little bit more. It's an opportunity for some of us to learn how to ask for help. It's an opportunity for some of us to learn to be more compassionate and kind and be proactive. So it really is a really good opportunity for many of us to kind of use some of the muscles that we don't get a chance to use often, or we're not in the habit of using, and to really engage ourselves in different ways and to stretch ourselves. I said we'll come back to school. I know schooling right now is a big issue in all the territories. I have had we talked earlier about the challenges in terms of children being even able to access some of the platforms and the Google Classroom and et cetera, and some of that being a challenge as well. But when we talk to parents, I have a client, and she is a teacher, and her teaching her child has been so challenging, and she's a teacher, so she's already skilled. Let's like when I talked to her, I thought, well, whoa, what about all the parents who have no skills or no training in teaching, and they are being forced, for lack of a better word, to wear this teacher hat. Can we talk to that? Let's start with you, Sister Esther. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, that is a great challenge. Many parents, you know, are now coming to the realization of how challenging teaching has been. When this thing first started, persons were saying, please, whose child is that? It cannot be my child. This is not how children behave. I don't know what to do. And so that was a cry for help. Parents have difficulty putting on the different hats that a trained teacher has to put on a daily basis, not just with one child. But remember, we're dealing with numbers as well. In the home, you are not just dealing now with numbers alone, you're also dealing with different age groups. Remember, at school, you may be a teacher for one age group or, between the ages 7 to 9 or whatever. At home, if you have a family that has 4 children and they are different age groups, you are dealing with 4 different classes. So it has made being a parent at home and requiring to assist your children as a teacher, and for me, it has quadrupled in terms of the stress and the demand made on you. So, what do we do? We may have to ask the bigger ones to help the little ones for a little bit, as we used to do long ago. The older ones help the younger ones, and we help the age group that we are most comfortable with. Or suggest to the little ones, you teach mommy or you teach daddy how you do this problem and make the child the teacher, so that the stress doesn't become you have to know it right. Because let me say one thing about children, because they are into their teachers, if you only do the process wrong, no, mommy, that's not how Miss said to do it. So you need to be prepared for that kind of rebuff from the child who doesn't trust your methods. And that even puts pressure on the parent. So one of the things that we can do is the government now has a certain number of hours in the day on television with different teachers for different age groups who will be teaching different subjects. And it's very interactive. And so you may have to put your child in front of the television, say during that time, you'll go and learn to do that, or mommy would sit with you while you do that. But I can tell you, it is very challenging. How do you, the parent, become a teacher and know how to teach all these different age groups at home, and teach them with methods that they would be comfortable with, and don't feel you're not doing it the way Miss or Sir say to do it. We may have to just let them do activities in the activity book and mark it on your own time. That's what I could recommend.
Sister Andrea, then Damon, Brother Damon.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. School is a control environment. School comes with rules and regulations. These are the ground rules. And now we're home. Not that home does not have any rules, but home is not school. So starting from that point, and especially smaller children, parents can never do right by them. Teacher said, teacher does it this way, and so that is always an issue. They don't matter. It doesn't matter to the 5-year-old how much training you have had as a teacher. That's not how my teacher does it. Whether you're right or wrong, that is always an issue. So it is something that it's a transition. It requires patience on the part of the parents, and they can also get tips from the teachers to assist them. And get other assistance so that you too don't become frustrated and then frustrate the child at the same time. And also realize our limitation. This is another place where we need to ask for help. And It's not for you to try to replicate the school day or the teacher, or be honest with the children, yes, I can't do it like the teacher Esther, but let's see how we're going to do it. And as Sister Esther said, let them tell you how they're supposed to do it, and then you can work from there to ease some of the frustration.
Yes, I would say first of all that I'm looking forward to Teachers Appreciation later this year. um, the value of teachers and so forth is coming to the forefront, and so we appreciate that. My advice would be is to revise content that has already been taught. The examples would be in the exercise books. What you can do as well is that once you want to revise that content, you can look within the textbooks for further further work that can be done. So teacher may have covered number 1 to 10 on that particular topic, but then you can extend it and say, okay, you understand the concept, you would have gotten 6 out of 10 correctly. I would like you to do the next 5. If you yourself cannot mark it, then of course, then is when you liaise with the teacher or the subject area. But that is one way to deal with it. When it comes to new content, that will be a lot more difficult. I know that throughout the islands, the various ministries are putting different things in place where teachers can reach out to the students. I would encourage parents to stay abreast with what is going on. And so if it is that there's a certain show every Tuesdays 4 to 5, you should be aware of that. Don't let it be that your child might have heard about it, but he or she is not interested. And so obviously they don't tune in. But you as a parent, this is the time where you need to be informed of what is going on around you or in your environment. We have a national briefing in St. Kitts every afternoon at 5. I try to encourage persons to listen to what we call legitimate sources. Get the information from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So when they bring you information on the education sector, what their plans are, you as a parent, you are aware of it, and then you can make contact with your school to find out, okay, what is going on. My son's teacher has not contacted me as yet, and so you can hold person a bit more responsible, but that is only if you are aware of what is going on.
Awesome. Well, we are just about out of time. Time does fly fast on this on this chat, but I want to kind of encourage or engage our listeners a bit in terms of 2 main things. One, communication. How do they manage their communication with their children? What is important in terms of communication? And 2, time. How do they manage time? Because time is a big issue, a big challenge with us in terms of how time works. I just want you to just briefly, in terms of your takeaways for parents, how would you speak to those 2 areas, communication and time? Let's start with you, Brother Bacchus. I know you just spoke. Let's start with you.
In terms of the communication, I think you have to be very mindful of your audience. When I say audience, who you're speaking to. You can't use necessarily the same language with a 4-year-old, 5-year-old that you would with a 12 or 16-year-old. They're very much aware that something is going on, and so do not keep information from them. Of course, you do not necessarily want to speak about the deaths and those sort of morbid figures or things of that nature, but they must be aware of what is going on, and that goes a long way. We take for granted sometimes that children are not digesting what it is that we are telling them, and they're very good at understanding what is going on, especially if mommy and daddy, you're speaking to them at their level and you're taking your time. In terms of time management, it's difficult, and we don't have the answers for everything. We're going to learn as we go. We spoke about the schedule earlier, making sure that you have a schedule, but I would say that don't let the schedule to be rigid as well. Leave some room for things to come up. So, for example, I would not advise that you try to start class at 9 o'clock in the morning, for example. For what we do at home here is at from 10 o'clock, Nyla does some work. So she has, from the time she wakes up, to play a bit, and then we do some work. The work is done at that particular time because it allows mommy or daddy to cook while she's doing her work, and so food is ready in time for lunch. Um, Give them a nap as big as they are. We talk about me time, and so the me time is important for parents. So let them, even if they're 12, 13, let them go lying in bed for half an hour, for an hour, and you recharge your batteries during that time. When they get up, you either give them some more work. We spoke about craft earlier. That's important. Don't let it all be about text, but the craft is important. And then finally, take them outside. If you have a yard space, as small as it is, even if you have a landing or veranda, some persons call it, take them out there, play some, they have the old time games that some of them might not know about. The other day we drew chalk on the pavement and we did the jumping jacks, I think it is. So introduce them to things that they might not be familiar with. And I think that is a good way of bonding with them, but also make sure that you mix up the activities. So you have the schoolwork, you have the craft, you have the downtime or the nap time, and then you have some yard time or where you go outside and just try to entertain each other.
Awesome. Really good structure. Anything to add, Sister Esther, in terms of the takeaway for parents?
Yes, in terms of communication, we need to remember as people of faith, we must communicate with them that God is watching, God cares. And so, in the whole management of time, we must make time to pray and let them hear you. Talking to God, let them also talk to God on their own behalf, telling Him or sharing with Him, how they feel and what they, want change. So, as people of faith, we must factor that in. You see, sometimes because we are in this kind of pandemic and the structures have not been as rigid, we will lapse in terms of getting up and saying our prayers because they would sleep longer. But I think we need to remember to factor in prayer within our day. Communicate to them that as mommy and as daddy, you are important. Yes, the things are happening out there, but we are concerned about you. So make time in your communication to listen to what their concerns are, what their fears are, what they would like to do. Write it down to show them that you are taking note of all the things. Yesterday, I had a time with my young lady and I said, what do you miss most? Let's put it in priority order, so that they understand, listen, you care, you're communicating to the children, you care and you feel with them and you want to, work this through with them. And so don't miss that time to, draw them into that, you said it me time, but time when we work together in setting a structure or putting a plan together, I really wish, many more parents will understand that they are the most important persons in their children's lives right now. And although they need the teachers, they also need to know you are hearing as parent, you are listening, you care, we can do this together and we'll draw strength from others. I think that is so important.
Wonderful, wonderful. And finally, Sister Andrea?
And just to remind them, this is an opportunity to connect with their children. As Sister Esther said, you need to listen to them. But as Brother Damon said earlier too, you also need to provide them with that sense of hope. So these are the things that we are planning to do in the future. After COVID, things might still be different. We still have to have our social distancing and our hygiene practice. We still have to ramp them up. But even with that, these are some of the things, and we're going to enjoy things. We're going to do it a little different than we used to before, but we still can have fun with each other.
Awesome. Really good tips. If you need to, you might need to sit down and rewatch this and write down some notes because some really good tips came out of our conversation today. Just really practically, I just want to add that if you have the opportunity to create boundaries in your home, everyone doesn't have that, but if you can create a play space and a workspace, and if you can, and you have to transition your workspace to play, literally transition it because that helps kind of prime children and adults too. It primes adults into knowing, okay, now it's time to work, now it's time to play, now it's time to rest. You want to make sure you, so if you're if it's just the bedroom or just the bed, just transition that space by putting um and putting and removing things based on that. And also, I saw this tip online and I thought it was really interesting. Garner the assistance of grandparents and aunties and uncles and let them have little play dates, get those persons to come on the little WhatsApp chat or whatever and say, look, I need 15 minutes. Sit down and talk with this child, sit down and play with this child, read a story. Go, let's spend time we're gonna spend time with grandma or granny today, and you set up a play date or even with their friends, you can set up virtual play dates that gives them opportunity to socialize because one of the big things that we're missing is socializing with our external family and our social network. And we miss it and they miss it. So doing that play date thing or that little story time with granny or whoever is a good way to do that. So that's just a little tip. I want to thank our guests. I want to thank Sister Moore Roberts and Brother Bacchus, and of course, Sister Errol for joining us today. We want to remind you of our past episodes. We've had a lot of food for thought over the past few days, weeks on relationships, on coping, anxiety, and fear. And we have a lot looking forward to. We're going to be doing a session just for persons who have chronic illnesses, who might be at risk. We recognize that those of us who have a greater risk factor might be dealing with anxiety and worry and concern. So we want to talk about that. We're going to be talking about working from home. That's going to be a big one as well. And any questions or any thoughts that you want to bring up, any comments you might have, leave them in the chats. If you want to connect with one of us, leave it in the chat and we'll reach out to you. And feel free to continue to use this resource. This is why we're here. So we want to thank you for tuning in, share it with your friends and your family. And we wish you all the very best as you continue to thrive in the midst of this crisis. God's blessings on you.